We're just learning that the notorious gangster James Whitey Bulger has been killed in prison. Officials had just moved him to a prison in West Virginia. Bulger is infamously known as eluding authorities for 16 years. He was serving 2 life sentences for his involvement in nearly a dozen murders.
In the underworld of crime, few names strike fear like James Whitey Bulger, a ruthless Boston crime boss, a cold-blooded killer, and an FBI informant who played both sides for decades. For over 20 years, Bulger ran the Winter Hill Gang, controlling Boston's drug trade, extortion, and murder-for-hire operations. But when the FBI turned on him, he vanished without a trace. For 16 years, he was one of America's most wanted fugitives, second only to Osama bin Laden. And when they finally found him, what they uncovered was even more shocking. James Whitey Bulger was born in 1929 in the tough streets of South Boston. A natural rebel, he earned his nickname Whitey for his blonde hair, though he hated it. By his teens, Bulger was already running with street gangs, committing robbery and assault. But he wanted more than petty crime. In 1956, he was arrested for armed robbery and sent to Alcatraz, the infamous prison that housed America's worst criminals. However, prison didn't break him. It made him. Bulger studied criminal strategy from the best and learned one valuable lesson: power isn't just about fear, it's about control. After his release in 1965, Bulger returned to Boston a hardened gangster. He joined the Winter Hill Gang, a ruthless Irish-American crime syndicate. Under Bulger's leadership, the gang took over illegal gambling, drug trafficking, and extortion. Rivals were eliminated, sometimes in broad daylight. But here's where it gets shocking. Whitey Bulger wasn't just a gangster. He was working with the FBI. In the 1970s, Bulger made a deal with the devil, FBI agent John Connolly. The FBI wanted to take down the Italian mafia, and Bulger agreed to be an informant. But what the FBI didn't know was that Bulger was playing them. While feeding the FBI intel on the Italian mafia, he used his FBI connections to eliminate rivals and protect his empire. Every time the police got close, his FBI informants tipped him off. For over 20 years, Bulger ran Boston with absolute immunity. That is, until the FBI finally turned on him. In 1994, an indictment was prepared against Bulger, charging him with murder, racketeering, and drug trafficking. But before they could arrest him, he vanished. For 16 years, Whitey Bulger became one of the FBI's most wanted criminals. He changed identities, traveled across the US and Europe, and lived in plain sight. No one could find him, until an unexpected tip led the FBI to a small apartment in Santa Monica, California. Inside, they found $822,000 in cash, weapons, and fake IDs. The manhunt was over. Whitey Bulger was caught. In 2013, Bulger stood trial for 11 murders, extortion, and money laundering. At 83 years old, he was sentenced to 2 life terms. But even prison couldn't protect him. In 2018, just one day after being transferred to a new prison, Bulger was beaten to death by fellow inmates. His eyes were gouged out, and his tongue was nearly cut off, a brutal message from the underworld. Was it justice? Or was it revenge? Whitey Bulger's story isn't just about crime, it's about how power, corruption, and betrayal can control even the most feared gangsters. Was he a criminal genius, or just a man who played the wrong game for too long? One thing is certain, he died the way he lived, surrounded by violence.